Well, today is the 18th of March. I was discharged from hospital yesterday afternoon. My situation's become a bit more complicated, I guess. Like last weekend just passed, I had to drive to hospital from Runnymede, which is about 2.5, 3 hours to the city, drive to the emergency department because I got a phone call from one of the nurses at Peter Mac saying that my kidney function was getting worse. I'd had a couple of blood tests prior to that during the week, so they wanted me to go to the emergency because they didn't have a room at Peter Mac as yet for me to stay, because they wanted me to go to Peter Mac, stay for the weekend so they could monitor my kidney function. So anyway, that was a bit of a kerfuffle, but ended up staying in hospital until Monday, discharged yesterday. But during that stay, the doctors who were checking on me every morning kept telling me that I needed to be closer to the city, closer to an emergency department, that where I was living at the moment was too far away because, what if I needed a blood transfusion or what if I had a fever? I needed to get to hospital quickly. And, I was a bit surprised about the blood transfusion part because nothing's been mentioned like that before. He said to me that sometimes when people go through this type of treatment that I'm doing now, the RICE, our blood levels or platelets will drop, and so you need a blood transfusion. So he kept reiterating, like, I really would prefer that if you could get closer to the city, and I've got nowhere to stay. At the moment, I'm staying a couple of days with my partner, my girlfriend, in Baronia, but the situation's a bit complicated because she's sharing a house with her sister, and because of her sister's religious beliefs, she doesn't feel comfortable with me staying here for long periods of time. So I can't really I don't want to put any pressure or tension in the relationship. So I really can't stay here. I said to him, look, I'm living in a van that's set up. I've been living in that for about a year now. I can just drive somewhere close to the city, and if I need to, I can come into Peter Mac or an emergency if I need to. But he kept saying that you'll need someone to care for you because apparently the stem cell bone marrow part of it, you need a full-time carer because it's going to knock you about. You'll be in hospital for about 3 or 4 weeks, and then it's a 3 to 6 month recovery. So you really need someone with you, especially if there's an emergency. So it's kind of left me in a dilemma because I just thought, well, maybe I could just park the van somewhere where I don't have to, where I can park most of the day and just, walk to the Peter Mac if I need to for my normal appointments or my chemo cycles. But anyway, it's caused some issues because obviously I've got no one else or nowhere to go. I live alone basically in the van. Like I said, I can't really I can't stay with my girlfriend and her sister. We've got 2 other people living in the house as well. I can't be with them full time, and they can't care for me because they're working. So anyway, I spoke to a social worker at Peter Mac, and she's sent me a couple of leads, and she's contacted another social worker through CoHealth, who's I've spoken to today. They're trying to find me like crisis housing or something like that, but I explained to them that I'm not on Centrelink. I don't have an income. I've just been living off my income protection insurance, which will run out in August, because I've never wanted to burden the government system. I just wanted to be self-sufficient, self-reliant kind of thing. So I don't have an income, so I can't really afford to pay rent. So even if you're able to find me a house, I don't think I'll be able to afford to pay the rent anyway. So I kept reiterating that I prefer to stay in a van if I could, because it's set up for solar. I've got my own power system. It's just the fact that I might need a full-time carer. And I said to them also that, well, if I need to go to hospital, maybe I'll get an ambulance membership and I can just call an ambulance if that happens, because it's a lot of if I have a fever, if I need a sudden blood transfusion, and those ifs may happen or they might not happen. So, so that's what I'm going through right at this stage. At this day, is I've got some people trying to find some accommodation for me. Like I said, I don't expect handouts and I don't want to burden the system, but at the same time, I've got a little bit of money in the bank, but that was to help me stay off Centrelink while I'm not working, so I don't really want to use it for rental because, the price of rent these days is sky high. besides that, there's other people that need a home. I'm set up for the van life, but it's just because of this treatment. But yeah, so that's where I'm at the moment. And how do I feel about all of this? Well, I'm starting to think it's a lot more trouble than it's worth. Like, I know I need the treatment, but I guess, sometimes I think, why can't it just be easy? Like, I want to live in the van, I want to stay in the van, it's rent-free. I just have to pay for fuel. Why can't I just park somewhere and manage myself? Like, I know that the stem cell transplant's obviously going to hit me pretty hard, but I can just lay in bed all day, which I'll do anyway, wherever I am. So it's kind of like, I feel like I'm forced into a corner, I guess, and it's like, yes, there could be resources out there that can help me, but all I need is a place to park long term, just for a few months. But anyway, health-wise, my white blood cell count's basically 0 now. So I've got to watch out for infections. I'm taking 2 white cell injections a day now instead of 1, just to help boost my system. Tomorrow, being Wednesday, I've got an appointment at Peter Mac where they'll put in a central line, and that's to go directly to the heart. And that's something that needs to be dressed by a specialist nurse once a week. So I guess there's a part of it that must be exposed if it needs dressing once a week. And that's in order for them to sort of extract the stem cells of good blood flow, and also in the future to feed the chemo through there instead of my arms, because my veins are scarring up or drying up, so to speak, because of all the chemo. So that's happening tomorrow. So that's at 8 a.m. Then 11:30 after the procedure, I'll be talking to the nurse that's going to be doing the dressings. And then I'll talk to her about, okay, where can I just come in every week, once a week, to get that done, particularly if I'm still staying in the van. And then after that, I'm going to CoHealth in the city, and they're going to sign some forms so that they can advocate for me and look for some possible crisis housing. So yeah, just getting a bit more complicated. And I guess I'm not normally one to ask for help, but it seems that I need it. So apart from that, I'm just feeling a bit, just generally unwell, tired, have spurts of energy, and then it doesn't last very long. Girlfriend is looking after my cat Joe, which is good. So it's good to see him for a little while. He wants to play, and he wants to play rough, but I can't afford for him to scratch my skin. So I sort of had to hold back a bit because, I don't want to get an infection. And in the meantime, medication's increased, and yeah. So we'll see what happens, I guess. Another week or so will be a second cycle of chemo. Then in April I'll have a PET scan, and then I'll start on the stem cell bone marrow transfusion transplant. And I think that's the thing that's going to hit me hard from the sounds of it. I think at the end of the day, if I can't find accommodation, they just have to deal with the fact that I've got no other choice but to live in the van. I'll park close by if I can, somewhere where I don't have to keep moving the van every 2 or 4 hours because of the parking. And then maybe I'll just have a nurse on call. I've got a number that I can speed dial if I need help. And like I said, I can get an ambulance membership, and the ambulance can pick me up and take me to the hospital if I get, a fever or I need a sudden blood transfusion. But I imagine that I've got to get my bloods tested twice a week, and that's how they sort of gauge whether I need to come in, I guess, for them to monitor how my blood is going. But I presume also that while I'm having the chemo, if they're doing blood tests, which I do, and I need a transfusion, they'll do it more likely than not. It'll be happening while I'm in hospital anyway. So, but yeah, that's it for now.